We're live. Yay! So, hello, Janine. We're live into the group right now, which is great. If anyone, hello, thank you for joining me. I'm just going to get, if anyone can see or hear us, can you give us a little thumbs up and just let me know that you're on and that you can see and hear us before we get going?
I can see it on my phone.
You can? I can see it on mine. Okay, good. So if anyone could give a little thumbs up, can you see it in there? Checking with my husband now just to make sure. Okay, so hi everybody. I have not been in and done a live for absolutely forever, it feels like. So I'm really excited to be back live in the group and really happy to have Janine Esbrand with me tonight. Janine is a founder of a company called Lightbox Coaching. She is a career coach and a career change expert, but also Janine is a flexible working people career expert. So Janine is a partner of Flexible Working People and is here to help to support you all on your career journeys. So the reason that I've asked Janine to join us tonight is because things are really tricky at the moment, and we're seeing so many posts coming in every day from people who are really struggling with their job search, maybe feeling like they want to make a change in their career, but feeling a little bit out of control. And I think with everything that's going on at the moment, generally we're feeling out of control. And, you know, layered onto that is kind of the job stuff. And there's been so many redundancies and, you know, just people are having a really tricky time. So I thought it would be useful to have Janine come in and help to guide us and give us some strategies on how maybe we can think about taking some control back in our careers. So Janine, we're gonna kick off with a question. We've had some brilliant questions actually from the group. So people have already sent some in, but I'm going to kick off just with you to maybe start with, why is it important for people to take control over their careers?
It's really important, particularly now, whether you are somebody who is facing redundancy or you're someone who is within your organization and you're trying to figure out how you navigate moving through or moving up within your organization. Now we're in a space where everyone just feels like, what's going to happen? There's so much uncertainty. We don't know what's going to happen. And so there can be the tendency to just like sit back and say, well, because we don't know what's going to happen, I'm just going to wait and see. I'm going to see how the land lies and then I will take action. And we saw that a lot at the beginning of the pandemic where people were like, well, I can't make plans. I can't do anything, thinking that it's only going to last a few months. But actually what we're realizing is this is going to be ongoing for some time. And so the people who decide that they're just going to wait and see what happens are going to be in a much worse position than those who are proactive during this period. Because once we come out the other side in terms of the new normal, the people who have prepared themselves, who have positioned themselves, who have made sure that they are ready for the opportunities that are there are going to be the ones who succeed. Whereas those who have just said, well, I'm just going to wait and see what happens, they're going to be playing catch up. And so in this time, it's important for you to be assessing, well, where am I? Am I in an industry that's in decline right now? What skills and expertise do I have that I could start to position for, you know, the industries that are perhaps like growing at this time, because there are industries that are growing right now. How can I be thinking longer term and not just, you know, what's happening right now? How can I basically take control of what I can take control of? So instead of just saying, you know, everything's uncertain, there are things that you can control. So focusing in on those things can help you to have a more positive mindset in a negative time, but also be doing all that you can to move forward rather than just being passive and waiting to see what happens.
So I think that's really great start point. And I think when we spoke last week, I said to you, I feel like a lot of people have just put the handbrake on and they feel like everything's kind of in such an uncertain time that they just sort of feel like they can't move. And actually what you've just said is don't put the handbrake on, get yourself set, get yourself in ready mode, because when things pick up, you're going to be in a much better position. So it's about reframing that. Okay, so I love that because I think people do feel that, and it's so disconcerting right now. And you sort of feel like you're hearing that people are putting, and they are not you're hearing, but people are putting so many job applications out, not hearing back and hitting brick walls. So we want to start now, have you to help people to start breaking that down a little bit. So if you were to give some advice about what control it looks like, and you've touched on some of that, but maybe let's deep dive into a few of those areas where people can take control. What would you say they are?
Yeah, so one of the biggest ones is not to panic. So when I hear people say, I've been putting out lots of applications and I'm not hearing anything back, what that says to me is you're not being strategic about what it is that you're doing. Because if you're just firing out applications and you're not spending time really tailoring those applications, the likelihood is they are not specific enough. So now more than ever, you can't afford to just be like putting in willy-nilly applications because it is a competitive market. And so in terms of taking that control, it is really taking some time to figure out, well, what do I actually want to be doing? And drilling into what is the right type of opportunity for me, so that when you put yourself out into a competitive marketplace, you're presenting yourself in a way where you look like the right type of candidate for this role, rather than someone who's panicking and is just applying for anything. So employers right now are going to be looking for the ideal candidate. So what you should be saying is, how can I position myself so that they can tell that I'm the ideal candidate? So taking control looks like slowing down a little bit and saying, well, what do I actually want to do and how do I want to position myself in the marketplace?
Okay, so just to answer that, and I think that's absolutely right. How do you present yourself as the ideal candidate? And the job market's really tough. And I know obviously as part of this, I work in recruitment. So I'm seeing hundreds of applications, whereas before I might get 20, now I'm getting 100. If before I get 100, I'm getting 200. And when you're sifting through, and from a recruiter point of view, sometimes you just can't go back to everybody, and you are looking to tick all those boxes. So it's okay to say, how do you position yourself as an ideal candidate? But what about all those people who are trying to get jobs but have transferable skills or might not tick all the boxes and they're just feeling really deflated? What do you say to them?
Yeah, so I think from a recruiter's point of view, it is ticking all those boxes. And sometimes you might feel like, okay, I don't necessarily tick all the boxes, but what you do need to be thinking about is, what is the purpose of the role? Like, why are they hiring for this position? What are some of the goals of the company? What are some of the challenges that the company's facing? So looking beyond just the job spec and thinking about, well, this is a company that is in this industry and this is what they are facing right now due to COVID. So what are some of the things that they might be thinking about? What are some of the goals that they might be setting? And if you can be the type of candidate who speaks to that and shows them that you're not just thinking about, oh, I want to land a role, but you're thinking about them and what their goals are, you stand out. And so you might not tick all the boxes, but you might be the type of candidate that they say, do you know what, this person actually gets it. Like, they actually understand what it is we're trying to achieve. And so you might be the one that they pay attention to, versus like, oh, someone else who may tick all the general boxes, but isn't showing that commercial acumen.
Yeah, so I think there's two things here. One is the whole willy-nilly approach, which I totally agree with you on. And I think that at a time like this, you sort of just throw mud at it, don't you? It's like, I'm just going to apply for anything and everything that looks right, and hopefully something sticks. And that can be really deflating, because that's just not a good strategy to have, which you just talked about. And then you also just touched on the fact that you want to stand out. So let's go a bit deeper on the how would you stand out, because that's the thing that I hear all the time. It's like, well, I've put my covering letter and I've put a CV together, but actually when you've got 150 applicants for a job, how do I stand out? So what can people do?
Do things a little bit differently. So one of the things that we have at our disposal, which people didn't have before, is social media, right? So if you are interested in a company, and you find out who the hiring manager is, you find out who is a person in a position of authority within the company, you can follow them on LinkedIn, connect with them, follow them on Twitter. What are they saying? What are they doing? Interact with them on those platforms. And then when your name comes up, when they skim your CV, it's like, oh, that name rings a bell for whatever reason. So it isn't necessarily like, oh, I'm just going to put application in. Do some groundwork as well. Get to know the company, see what's going on, so that you can make insightful comments, or you can start insightful conversations on social media before you even submit your application. Or on the reverse, on the flip side, when you're following up, you can use what you know from social media to help you to be a candidate that is going above and beyond just looking at the website.
So, Janine, I love that advice, and I love it because I've got a real example to share with people to inspire people tonight that happened this week, which is that we had a job. It was a senior job. There were lots of applicants, and we shortlisted to about 3 or 4. And one of the candidates wasn't shortlisted, but she really believed that she was ideal for the job. She connected with the CEO on LinkedIn and started a chat, went around in a different way, And interestingly, they rejected her straight off from the CV, and they made an offer this week. So, so exactly, what's that?
They made an offer to her, like based
They
on
made
her
an offer
LinkedIn
to
interaction.
her, and the best part of the story was that she turned them down. But that's not the point.
I love it.
The point was not that. The point was that she did everything that you just said, and I think that's also really important. And I think that people are a little bit afraid of stepping outside the comfort zone, and should I connect, and you do anything right now that you can to get yourself in front of, you know, the hiring manager or the CEO and stand out. And you're absolutely right. When they were sifting through those CVs, he'd seen her, he then checked out her LinkedIn and thought, oh, she does look interesting actually, and that's what got her the interview, that's what got her in. And they'd rejected her. So it really is, you know, it's just not a send your CV job right now. And, you know, and even sending the covering letter and the CV, I'm still seeing really sort of lazy, if that's the right word, covering notes and lazy CVs. So talk to me a little bit about, you know, what they should do with the actual application, with the CVs and the covering notes and presenting. And one of the questions we had coming through was, how do I show my personality through my CV? That were questions that came in. So tell us a little bit, give us some insights on that.
Yeah, so when it comes to your CV and your cover letter and your LinkedIn profile, the thing that I say to people, say to my clients, I say to people all the time, make it easy for people. What I see is people making it too difficult. Like, they will give me a CV, I look at it, and because I know their experience, because they've told me, I'll look at it and I'll say, you haven't mentioned this, or you haven't mentioned that. And they're like, oh yeah, I know, but I mentioned that. And I'm like, what you said here is so vague, so generic. I don't get from what you said what it is your experience is. So what you need to be doing is really firstly saying, what are some of my highlights? What are some of the things I want them to know? What are some of the things that make me stand out in terms of experience, exposure, skills that I have? And how can I make sure that that comes across in my CV? So, like, if you've done some really notable things in your career, you've had some really great projects, those are the types of things that will make people say, oh, that's interesting. She worked on this massive project, or she's done this, or she's done that. Make sure that those things are easily identifiable on your CV. And in terms of your personality comes across partly through showing the types of things that you've done in the past, the skills that you've done, the hobbies that you have, the types of examples that you're using on your CV. So you don't want to just be listing things out like, oh, you know, I manage a team, or, you know, I organize events. It's like, can you give us a specific example of an event that you organize? And in that specific example, you can then express your personality, because it's like, oh, she gets involved in those types of projects, or she's this type of person. So I would say, don't just list out generically what you've done. Pick a few examples, specific examples, where you can give them either figures around revenue or numbers that are really specific, that help them to see like the caliber of candidate that they're looking at.
Okay, so this is all, you know, advice that I think, you know, people hear it, and I think they hear it all the time, but they're not doing it. And I know they're not doing it because I'm seeing CVs every day, and I'm not seeing great CVs, and it is a skill to get it right and to get the covering letter right. So and so I think people need to really take a step back and look at the tools that they have. Again, would you agree? Sort of take a big review.
The thing with like writing CVs, it's not really a skill that we're taught properly. So you might, you know, careers advisors or whatever at school, it's like you just have to do bullet points. But what goes into the bullet point and how you articulate what it is that you're doing is really, really important. So one of the things that you should be doing is, write your CV, but you need to be giving it to somebody, not necessarily a professional in the first instance, but ask your friend, ask your spouse, this is what I'm trying to get across. When you read this, is this what you get? Because the thing about communication is, I can say something to Katie, but Katie can hear something different. So I need to make sure that what I'm communicating with you and what you're hearing is what I intend for you to hear. And I think people aren't doing that on the CV. They're just writing it and saying, okay, this is all my experience. But is that what the person on the other side needs to hear in order for them to invite you for interview? Ask yourself that question. And if you can't say yes, absolutely. Okay, let's put it this way. Would you invite yourself to interview after reading your CV?
Good question.
Think about it objectively. If it wasn't me, if someone else gave me this CV and I read it, would I say, oh, I need to invite this person in? Or would I say, yeah, this is all right? If it's the latter, then you need to go back to the drawing board.
And what I find really interesting is sometimes I see CVs and covering letters, and the covering letter, like literally, I've already hired them before I've read the CV, because the covering letter is so awesome. I buy into them so much. The personality comes out, the key skills come out, it's tailored. And I think, I love this person. And I get to the CV and I think, this is awesome. But before I've even touched the CV, I'm sold. And that's a great application.
Yeah.
And for me, having a great covering letter and then a CV to support that really is a great thing. It's those sort of covering letters that go, hi, please find attached my CV. I'm really interested in this job. No,
it's wasted. It's
wasted. Yes. And back to your other point where you were saying, and what you've just said is tailor. Like, what's the job? Sell yourself. Don't send a CV that's just off the shelf. Literally every job application you get, tailor it. Okay, I'm going to jump into some questions for you, Janine, because we've already gone nearly 20 minutes. I feel like we've literally just started and we haven't even touched the questions coming in. This is obviously, an area lots of people want help in. So I'm going to go to the questions. They're anonymous, so I'm going to keep them anonymous, right? The first one is, I'm in quite a niche role and I've got a broad background gained for many years in the contract center and technology industry. I feel that I should be at a more senior level based on my experience, but I've started to question if I'm in the right role in industry. What suggestions have you got on how to identify opportunities that match your skill set whilst not devaluing your financial compensation if you're looking to change careers? Long question.
Yeah. So there's a few things in that, but the thing that I will start with is, when you're thinking about, okay, what skills do I have and how do I move that into a different industry? What people automatically think of is, if I change roles, I'm going to have to take a pay cut. And that isn't necessarily the case. So there's two things that you have to deal with. Firstly, what is the role that you want to move into, and how closely aligned are your skills and expertise to what you'll actually be doing? So don't worry about the title so much and how different it is, but really drill down into what are the actual things that I do on a day-to-day basis here in my current role, and what is required in the role that I want to move into. And when you can kind of match those and you can show how what you're doing on a day-to-day basis translates into what you want to go into, then it's like, okay, well, these are the types of roles that could be well aligned to the skills that I already have. And if you're able to demonstrate how you've performed those skills and got results to the new employer, that you can negotiate the salary. All they want to know is, can this person come in and can they do what it is that I want them to do, and do it to a high standard? Doesn't matter necessarily if you haven't done that specific job title, but have you done those specific tasks before?
Do you think right now, in today's market, if you haven't done exactly that, you haven't got the job title and you don't tick the boxes, are you going to get through? Have you got examples, or are you working with people where people are, finding, good outcomes from applying for jobs that don't, tick all the boxes?
Yeah, so I've worked with clients. So I had a client that I worked with recently who went from working as a lawyer in private practice. She'd been working in private practice for over 10 years. And she moved into working in-house in a legal department, but doing work that's different from what she's been doing in a completely different industry from where she's been operating. So what we did with her was to say, okay, what is the industry that you're going into? What are some of the clients that you worked with that maybe were similar to what you're going to be doing? And let's talk about how your specific skills are going to be beneficial to them. So that's how we crafted her documents and how we prepared her for interview, and made sure that the examples that she was using were very well aligned to what it was that the organization wanted. And she landed the role, and she was able to negotiate a 10K increase in the offer that they, a 10% increase in the offer that they gave her. And that was literally 3 months ago, within the pandemic. So it is doable, but it's just about you being strategic about how what you're pitching yourself for, and then how you're able to demonstrate to them that you are the good candidate.
So I love the amazing story. It's really it's going to inspire people that it can be done. But obviously this lady had your help, and I think it's harder, isn't it, when you don't have the help of a career coach? And I'm sure everybody listening to this just wants to phone you up and go, help me. So trying to do the best we can in the space of this. But it's true, isn't it? It's like somebody who knows, you can craft and tailor her application, and she got that job. But I'm feeling from these questions and these emails that are coming in that people aren't feeling in that positive mindset, and they don't have Janine, on on the end of the phone. And the next,
but can I touch on that point there, Katie, around the mindset? Because I think even in this example where the person's like, I don't know whether I'm good enough, or not I don't know whether I'm good enough, but in terms of I don't know whether what I've been doing is the right thing for me. And there's been other people raise points around imposter syndrome coming up, and like, am I actually good enough to go for the type of role that I want to go for? And I think that aside from the strategy, aside from do your CV this way, do your LinkedIn, reach out to people, it's really important that we focus on mindset. And people overlook that, because if you are going into your job search and you are already telling yourself that you're not good enough, you're counting yourself out. So how are you going to show up and convince someone else to hire you if you yourself don't think that you are worthy of being hired? And so there's a difference.
So what do people do there, Janine?
Say again?
So what do people do with that?
Yeah, so I'm saying
the mindset.
You need to be thinking about that, because often people aren't recognizing that their mindset is that. So spend some time talking to yourself around like what you're able to do. Look back on your past experience and say, look, this is what I have achieved in my career. This is how far I have come, and go from being like, oh no, I can't do this, to an empowered state where you're like, I've achieved a lot. So let me go into this with a positive mindset around what it is I can do. And that can make a huge difference to your motivation as you're going through the process.
Okay, so this next email touches on all of those things, and I feel this person's pain point so much. So I can't read it all, but basically this person was made redundant before the pandemic, taken some time to recover, and I think that's really important too, recovering after redundancy and kind of regrouping. Hit to the post on loads of jobs, long, strange career history, evolved, has done a senior role, then a less senior role, now wants to get back into a senior role, but feels like she needs to take a step down before she takes a step forward. Feels like she's got a strong CV, but has got imposter syndrome, has applied for loads of roles, but hasn't really got anywhere, and is just feeling totally, heart is heavy. So this is a really tough time this person's having. And then at the end it says, any advice on what I could do for a living? I'm at a loss to what I should be applying for, and I'm not getting anywhere with my applications. So I'm not surprised, given that email. And I know you've touched on a lot of that so far, but let's just touch on some of those for this person again.
Yeah, I think for that person, she mentioned that, she had a senior role and then she took a lower role, and then she wants to go into senior role, but she's got imposter syndrome. So what she's now doing is applying for roles that are not senior, and she's not getting them. And so for me, the fact that she has, I think she mentioned in that email that she landed a few interviews, right? So the fact that she has means that she is to an extent in her applications presenting herself correctly, because she got invited for 2 interviews. But what are the roles that she's applying for? It sounds like it's scattergun. It sounds like it's lots of different roles. And then she's like, I don't even know what I want to do. So this person, I would say, just pause, like stop applying and take some time to decide, make a decision about what it is you want to go for, and then go for it, and be focused and targeted in those roles, as opposed to being all over the place and not getting anywhere. So the focused approach is much better and will get you further. And with the imposter syndrome, if you've operated at a senior level before, you can do it again. So it's up to you to decide, do I want to go back there or not? And then if there are some skills gaps, things that you need to work on and brush up on because you've had 2 years out, then work on those things. There's ways that you can brush up your skills, right? But if that's what you want to do, I would say go for that, and don't, stop applying for roles that are beneath your pay grade, I guess.
Great answer. Okay, but I think the first point and the first most important thing this person needs to do is take the step back and decide what they want to go for.
Yeah,
and work that through before they start
targeted.
Applying for everything, and be a bit more targeted. Okay, and work on their mindset, which we've talked about. Okay, we've talked a little bit about this already. We've talked about it a lot, actually. The job market's so competitive right now. I feel like it's just pointless applying unless I tick every box. I want to change track and do something different using transferable skills. But given that most hiring managers can and are hiring exactly what they want and need, is it even worth pursuing? And how should I go about it? You sort of touched on that already.
Yeah, and I think, it totally is. And also be thinking about, where are we moving to as in terms of the marketplace? Yes, it's very competitive right now. But if you start to think outside of the box in terms of what's actually growing, like telecoms is growing right now. The shares of Zoom has gone through the roof. Like, how are we shifting in terms of the way that we do life because of this pandemic? And can you look for opportunities in industries that are growing right now, where you could be using your skills and expertise? Because I think right now people are like, oh, you're listening to the news and all you're hearing is redundancy, but we're not always seeing the other side of the picture where there is growth in some areas. So perhaps you look to say, well, how can I position myself to be looking in those growth areas and using the skills and expertise I already have? How could I get in? So this is all about being strategic and thinking, how do I position myself for the new normal, rather than just saying there's nothing here right now.
Agreed. And, and let's not undermine the fact that this is a really difficult time.
It is.
And hundreds of people have been made redundant, and there are loads more applications, and it is tough. So no one is saying it's not. And then the next question, which leads me on to that, is tips on how we keep motivated, because it is tough and people are struggling. And so Karen, I think she's happy to be named, has said tips on keeping motivated during the top job search. It's time consuming. It's a roller coaster of ups and downs, anxiety inducing, depressing, and mostly a game of stony silence and rejection. Yes, you're not painting a great picture there, Catherine. It kind of is what it is right now. And I'm guilty as a recruiter. You've got hundreds of people to get back to and you just don't have time to do it all. So it's hard. I get it.
It is hard and it is disheartening. And I will say, with the rejection piece, like, don't take it personally. And the reason why I say don't take it personally is because, like, as a recruiter, Katie can't respond to everybody. Recruiters can't respond to everybody, and they don't know you yet. So it isn't personal that they've decided not to respond to you. But when we get those rejections, we do take it really personally, and take it to the point where you then start questioning, am I good enough? And they're not responding to me. That means that I'm not good enough. It's not even that. It's a numbers game at the end of the day. And so if you can tell yourself, okay, with every rejection that I get, I'm one step closer to the yes, then it just switches your mindset about the fact that this is a numbers game. Like, we are in a competitive market. And so you're going to have to apply for more to give yourself more of an opportunity to land a role. But when I say apply for more, I don't mean scattergun. I mean in a targeted way. Strategically, keep showing up, keep going. And you see on LinkedIn all the time, people say, like, I've been applying for 5 months, 6 months, 8 months, 9 months, and I finally got a role today. If you give up, then you're definitely not going to get a role. You've got to keep pushing.
Agreed. And just to add to that, as with my recruiter hat on, it's the people who send the applications and just sit and wait for the recruiter to get back to them that get put on the no list. And it's the people who go the extra mile and send me an email 2 days later saying, did you get my application? Have you had a chance to look at it? And where am I with it? Then I go, oh yeah, I should have a look. And then I have a look and it's either you're in the rest of no, and I actually genuinely respond to people. So I think be proactive as well.
Follow up.
I think too many people send off an email, send off the covering note in a CV and apply and just leave it to the God, like leave it, in the ether. It's like, be proactive. Go
and
after
sometimes
it.
Online.
They will respond. Yeah.
Sometimes on online job boards, if you haven't got the right keywords in your CV, they might not have even seen it. And so if you're just applying to online all the time and thinking, oh, I'm getting rejected, a human might not have even seen your application. So don't take it personally.
Don't take it personally and just be proactive. Don't just send it off and hope for the best. Okay, we're running out of time. It's 9 o'clock. I'm going to do one more question I've got here. We've talked about tips. Rachel asked tips for making your CV more personable, but I think we sort of talked about that. Advice around virtual interviewing, I think, is probably another topic. But let's talk about tips on networking for job search. I find it easy to chat socially, but find job search focused chat much more difficult. Any killer opening lines, any phrases to request help? What could people write? How do people reach out to people? How should people do that online?
Yeah, I feel like right now, I know that everyone wants to reach out, but really the most powerful networking comes through relationships. So instead of like reaching out to someone cold and then just requesting to help them, is there a way that you could support them? Is there a way that you could like follow them on social media a little bit and comment on their stuff, build up a bit of a rapport before you go in and you ask for stuff? And then the best way to build a relationship and start a conversation is to find something that in common, like common ground, where you can say, hey, I saw that you went to this conference. I went there last year, or I noticed that you're putting on this event. How interesting. I'm interested in that. Like, just literally, how would you talk to a friend? And yes, it is more professional, but at the end of the day, if you think of networking like building relationships, you're going to approach it differently and not in the way where people on the receiving end are like, this person's just contacting me because they want something.
Got it.
It's more
Okay.
effective.
Okay, so find something in common, maybe look to see if you've got a connection in common and say, I see, something that you can talk about. Okay.
Yeah.
Final question, because it's come through on the thread, which has just been sent through from Michelle, which you could probably answer quite quickly. Re-CVs, I get conflicting advice. One, stand out, use infographics and make it interesting, exciting. Or two, keep it simple, basic fonts and phrases to get past the ATS. What's the truth?
Depends on your industry. I are on the side of keep it simple. But if you're in a creative industry like media or technology, the kind of colorful and out there CV might be more appropriate. But if you're unsure, I would go with the kind of standard, simple, straightforward. Focus on your wording rather than like making it look jazzy, because the content I think is more important than the presentation. Both are important, but what you're saying is really important. And just like, if people prefer the traditional way, getting a really colorful jazzy CV might put them off. So yeah, that's what I would say.
And that's
what typically works.
Yes,
I think.
I'm with you on that, Janine. I agree. Keep it safe unless you're in a creative industry. Okay, so we're running out of time. We've had quite a lot of people on, and I'm sure that this has sparked a lot more questions probably. So Janine is going to come back into the group. If you've got more questions, you can post them on the thread, and Janine has said she'll promises to come in and answer them. Before we go, I know that Janine has come up with some tools and resources, or you've come up with a planning worksheet, haven't you, to assist people in how to think about planning their career move. So do you want to just tell us about that?
Yeah. So I'm going to be sharing it with Katie. She'll probably share it tomorrow. But it's just a planning worksheet for you, and it's got different sections on there for you to kind of explore the different things you should be thinking about right now in terms of, what skills do you have? What kind of role are you targeting? What skills do you need? Who could potentially help you when you're thinking about networking? Where can you be targeting your energies? And like, what are your top 3 things that you're going to be focusing on, so you have that in one place, as opposed to being like, oh, where should I go? You can kind of plan it out as you're focusing on a particular role.
Brilliant. Okay, so that's going to be a proper tool that you can take away as a download and start to think about strategically planning your job search. So I'm going to put that up on the Flexible Working People website tomorrow, and we'll send a link out as soon as Janine gets it to me. So Janine, I thought that was I was on the chat. I thought it was a brilliant chat. I always learn something new.
Love it.
But we covered so much, and I feel like there's so much that people can do to help themselves. And I know that it's a really tough market, and no one's taking away from that. But there are things that you can do to proactively take back the control, get back in the driving seat, take off the handbrake. And get moving. And I think that, as you said right at the beginning, standing still is not going to get you anywhere. So like, take yourself out, change your mindset and work through. And you've given so much brilliant advice tonight. So thank you for your time. That's cheered up my lockdown. That's a whole plan. We might have to have another one next week. So brilliant. Thank you again. Janine's going to be in the group. For those of you who haven't headed over to the Flexible Working People website, woe is you, because you really should have done. There's loads of jobs being posted. There's lots of jobs every day. So make sure that you sign up, register, and get involved. There's also downloads and resources that you can tap into, and Janine's resource will be there tomorrow. So thank you, Janine. Thanks everyone who's listened tonight.
Thank you for having me.
And good luck everyone with your job search. And you can always email me or ping me or Janine, or post in the group, and we'll get some advice out to you. All right, take care everyone. Have a good night. Thanks, Janine.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.